A long time ago, the United States of America was beginning to become more established, winning their independence from England after the Revolutionary War. Now that they were independent and unrestricted, a hunger for expansion grew. That expansion shot for the West. The cowboys, deserts, the gunslingers, all of that stuff we know and love comes out of this era. A very important part of this era was the Oregon Trail. Well, not really the game Oregon Trail. This Oregon Trail. This Oregon Trail marked the beginning of the migration and introduction of the West to the people of the first few states, and led to all the cowboys and deserts and gunslingers. It was as simple as that.
Well, not quite.
The Oregon Trail was quite literally among the largest frontiers in American history, helping in populating the western American coast, as well as strengthening the idea of the American character throughout its treacherous length.
So grab your saddle and strap in as we cover all you need to know about the Oregon Trail.
The year is 1803. The United States of America has just found its footing and was beginning to thrive. A country which was not thriving, however, was France. France was in the middle of a war, led by none other than Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon needed money because fighting a war against the Great British Empire was not cheap.
Since France was rapidly losing interest in establishing an empire in North America, Napoleon decided to sell their territory in the New World in an effort to fund their war with Britain. Named after the French king, Louis XIV, the Louisiana Territory was gigantic, equating to approximately 828,000 acres of land, which Napoleon sold to America for 4 cents an acre. In the largest land deal history had ever seen, France sold the Louisiana Territory to America for the price of $15 million, about $395 million in today's money.
With this purchase, the United States had a lot of mapping and exploring to do. The president at the time, Thomas Jefferson, sent out 2 explorers, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, to map and document the newly acquired Louisiana Territory. Lewis and Clark's charting adventures provided information to Americans hoping to migrate westward. Many Americans believed in the idea of manifest destiny, the God-given right to expand westward, meaning that everything they saw was theirs.
Not long after the Lewis and Clark expedition, 4 traders set out westward to hunt. Furs were highly sought after, specifically in Europe. Animals such as beavers, raccoons, foxes, minks, deers, and even bears were hunted for their pelts. The furs were used to make clothing, often coats, and were incredibly popular among Americans and Europeans alike. The 4 hunters who traveled westward all took a similar path into the Rocky Mountains, often following Native American hunting trails, which often went past water sources and good hunting grounds.
These paths led the blueprint for what eventually became the Oregon Trail, traversed by approximately 500,000 pioneers during its usage. The trail was mostly used by explorers, trappers, hunters, mountain men, and even soldiers. It wasn't until 1841 that the first serious pioneer set out on the Oregon Trail to reach the West Coast, their destinations ranging from Sacramento, California to Portland, Oregon. Most pioneers set west for economic reasons, some in an attempt to escape financial hardship and others to find financial gain.
In 1849, gold was discovered in California. Thousands upon thousands of prospectors rushed west in an attempt to make a fortune. These people became known as 49ers, named after the gold rush of 49. Other pioneers left their lives east for the free land promised in Oregon. Many Mormon pilgrims traveled westward to escape religious persecutions, to create their own civilization of Mormons. The path taken by these pilgrims became known as the Mormon Trail, which lies north of the Oregon Trail. The Mormons settled in modern-day Salt Lake City, Utah.
Pioneers, prospectors, and Mormons alike were willing to leave their comfortable lives in order to start a new one, though their journey would not be a comfortable one. Of the 500,000 people who would traverse the Oregon Trail, 20,000 of them perished, averaging 10 deaths for every mile.
Because traveling the Oregon Trail could take as long as 5 months, there was most certainly an established way to live, and it wasn't very easy. In this period of time, early Americans lived a not-so-lavish life like the ones we live today, but one constantly fixed on a survival mindset, and this was only more prevalent on the trail. Most travelers would be seen with big wagons, called prairie schooners, covered by waterproof cotton or linen canvas that were used to transport all the stuff they happened to take along the trail. Most, if not all, of the covered wagon's room was taken up by supplies like food and lesser personal belongings.
These wagons were pretty heavy, as they could sometimes weigh in around 2,500 pounds, with 1,000 of these pounds being taken up by food alone. The wagons were pulled across the country by oxen for their powerful bodies, or occasionally even mules. Even though some of these wagons were the best options for moving supplies at the time, they still had problems. Sure, they rode well on most of the grassy plains, but when they encountered anything like bodies of water or mountain ranges, things would get difficult fast. The mountains would make the wagons hard to move, and were a big delay that pioneers tried to avoid when possible. But the most dangerous out of the two would be crossing rivers.
Running water could tip over the wagons, scare the oxen, and generally be pretty dangerous. If the wagon tips, the supplies would run with the river and get lost, or even become unretrievable. And the same thing could be caused by the cattle getting spooked, not to mention the danger these events could have on the surrounding pioneers trying to get across too. As general dangers on the trail, accidents, exhaustion, and disease all posed as huge threats to the pioneers. The natives, however, proved themselves not to be much of a problem to the pioneers, sometimes being seen as helpful. There were many diseases going around during the time of the Oregon Trail, but none of them were as prevalent as cholera.
This deadly disease is described by the CDC as a diarrheal illness caused by the infection of the intestines with Vibrio cholerae bacteria. Without proper hydration or left untreated, this bacteria could enter the body in the morning and kill the person before the sun sets. When a pioneer showed obvious signs of cholera with no way to treat it, the others in the party would usually stop until the person eventually passed away, so they could be buried on the spot, many in the middle of the trail.
A majority of pioneers with cholera would survive, but would have to live in misery for a few weeks in the wagon. Apart from those dangers, firearm misfires, attacks by immigrants and other immigrants, lightning, hailstorms, grass fires, gunpowder explosions, snakebite, and suicide were all other common causes for death and injury on the Oregon Trail. To many of the immigrants, all of this pain and moving westward is going to be worth it, because to them, if they weren't going to do it, who would?
The Western Frontier is a monumental landmark in American history, beginning an era of discovery and change that wouldn't end until after the Industrial Revolution. The pioneers who braved the Oregon Trail perfectly demonstrated the character of America: valiant, persistent, and determined.
The sacrifices of the first to embark on the trek to the west enabled hundreds of thousands to follow in their footsteps.
Because of the Oregon Trail, the western United States was populated, allowing the U.S.'s economy to grow.
Overall, the Oregon Trail was incredibly impactful and positively influenced the future of America.